This story was sent to me by one of my followers who claims this experience is completely true. Last summer, my friend Susan and I were heading on a backpacking trip to a very popular hiking area in Washington state called the Enchantments. We left before sunrise because we wanted to reach the trail early before the crowds arrived. I was driving through Stevens Pass while the mountains were covered in thick morning fog. The road felt unusually empty. For miles we did not see another car. The deeper we drove into the mountains, the quieter everything became. Even Susan noticed how strange the forest felt. She looked out the window and said it was almost too quiet. There were no birds, no wind, no sounds coming from the trees. It was like the entire forest had suddenly gone silent. After driving for about an hour and a half, I needed to stop for a quick bathroom break. There were no gas stations anywhere nearby. Then I noticed a small road with a sign that said State Forest Road. It looked like the perfect place to stop for just a minute. I pulled over and parked on the side of the gravel road. Susan stayed inside the car while I walked toward a large pine tree about 30 feet away. Since we were completely surrounded by forest, I was not worried about anyone seeing me. There was simply no one around. At least that was what I believed. The cold air felt heavier than before. As I stood there, I suddenly felt an uncomfortable sensation. It was almost like someone was standing somewhere behind me, watching every movement I made. I quickly looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Just endless trees disappearing into the thick gray fog. I told myself I was only imagining things. I finished as quickly as possible and started walking back toward the car. The moment I grabbed the door handle, Susan looked up at me. The color had completely disappeared from her face. She was staring past my shoulder without blinking. Then in a quiet, nervous voice she said, "That lady is really creepy." For a second I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I slowly looked at Susan and asked, "What lady?" Susan slowly raised her shaking hand and pointed behind me. I turned around expecting to see nothing. Instead, I saw a woman standing beside the exact same tree where I had been only seconds earlier. She was so close that if I had taken a few more steps, I could have reached out and touched her. My entire body froze. There was no way she could have walked there without me hearing her. Just a few moments ago, I had been standing in that exact spot. There had been no one there. No footsteps. No engine. Nothing. She looked unusually tall. She was wearing a long black robe that reached the ground. The hood covered almost her entire face. The only thing I could see was a pale mouth that never moved. She stood completely still, not blinking, not speaking, not making a single sound. Behind her back she appeared to be holding something. Whatever it was, she kept it hidden from us. Then without warning, she took one slow step toward the car. The gravel should have made a crunching sound. It did not. She moved in complete silence. That was the moment I noticed something even stranger. Parked beside her was a large black SUV with dark tinted windows. It looked old and dirty, like it had been sitting there for years. But that made absolutely no sense. There was only one narrow road leading into that area. Neither Susan nor I had seen another vehicle the entire time. We would have heard an engine. We would have seen it drive in. Instead, it looked as if both the woman and the SUV had simply appeared out of nowhere. Susan whispered my name. Her voice was trembling. She kept saying, "Please get in the car. Please just go." I could not take my eyes off the woman. She slowly tilted her head, almost as if she was studying us. Then something that still gives me chills happened. The corners of her mouth slowly stretched into a smile. But it did not look human. It looked wrong, like her face had forgotten how a real smile was supposed to look. And then she started walking toward us. The moment she started walking toward us, every instinct in my body screamed that we needed to leave. I jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. Susan was already crying as she locked every door in the car. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the keys. I finally started the engine and pressed the gas as hard as I could. Gravel exploded behind the tires as we sped back toward the highway. For several seconds, neither of us said a single word. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see the woman chasing us. Instead, I saw something even worse. The black SUV was pulling out of the forest road behind us. It stayed several hundred feet back, never getting closer, never falling farther behind. It matched every turn I made. Every time I looked into the mirror, those dark windows were staring back at us. I could not see who was driving, or if anyone was driving at all. Susan finally whispered, "Do not stop. No matter what happens, do not stop." My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely breathe. After several miles, I rounded a sharp curve through Stevens Pass. The SUV disappeared behind the mountain for only a second. When I looked again, it was gone. There was nowhere it could have turned. No side roads, no parking areas, nothing. It had simply vanished. I slowed down just enough to make sure I was not imagining things. The road behind us was completely empty. It was as if the vehicle had never existed. Neither of us spoke for almost 20 minutes. We eventually reached the trailhead, but neither of us felt excited anymore. The entire hike felt different. Every time I looked into the trees, I felt like someone was watching us. Like whatever we had seen had somehow followed us into the mountains. Even now I still get chills thinking about that morning. If Susan had not been there with me, I probably would have convinced myself that none of it was real. But we both saw the same woman. We both saw the same black SUV. And neither of us has ever been able to explain how they appeared out of absolutely nowhere. To this day, I still avoid stopping on lonely forest roads in the mountains because sometimes I wonder if that woman is still standing out there waiting for the next person to pull over. A few days after we got home, I tried to convince myself that everything had been nothing more than a strange misunderstanding. Maybe another vehicle had quietly pulled onto the road. Maybe the woman had simply been hidden behind the trees. No matter how hard I tried, none of it made sense. The memory refused to leave my mind. A week later, Susan called me late at night. The moment I answered, I could hear fear in her voice. She asked me one question. "Did you ever look at the pictures from our trip?" I told her I had not. She asked me to open my phone while she stayed on the line. I scrolled through the photos we had taken during the hike. Everything looked completely normal. Mountains, lakes, trees. Then I opened one picture near the beginning of the trip. It was taken just a few minutes after we had left the forest road. The photo showed me standing beside the trail smiling at the camera. But deep in the background between two trees was a dark figure. A woman wearing what looked like the same long black robe. She was standing perfectly still, watching us. I immediately zoomed in. The picture became blurry. But one thing was impossible to ignore. Her face was completely hidden, except for her mouth. It was smiling. The exact same unnatural smile we had seen beside the road. I felt my stomach drop. Susan quietly said, "Look at the next picture." I swiped to the next photo. The woman was gone. Nothing but empty trees. I thought maybe it was just a trick of the light. Then Susan told me something that made my blood run cold. She had the original photo on her phone too. But when she opened it, there was no woman in the background. Only my copy showed the figure. We compared every picture. Every single one was identical. Except that one. Only my phone had captured her. Neither of us could explain why. I still have that photo saved. Sometimes I tell myself I should delete it, but every time I try, something inside me stops. Because a part of me is terrified that if I erase the only proof she ever existed, the next time I drive through Stevens Pass, she will be waiting for me in person instead of hiding inside a photograph. For months, I refused to tell anyone what had happened. I knew how unbelievable it sounded. A mysterious woman, a black SUV that appeared from nowhere, a photograph that showed something only I could see. Most people would have laughed, so I stayed quiet. Almost a year later, another hiking season began. One evening I was scrolling through an online hiking forum when a new post caught my attention. The title made my heart stop. "Strange woman on State Forest Road near Stevens Pass." My hands started shaking as I opened it. The person who wrote the post described pulling over on the exact same road early in the morning. They said they noticed a woman wearing a long black robe standing beside the trees. She never spoke, she never moved, she only smiled, just like the woman Susan and I had seen. There were dozens of comments underneath. Some people said they had experienced the exact same thing over the years. Different dates, different seasons, but always the same road, the same black SUV, the same silent woman. None of them had an explanation. Some people believed she was part of a dangerous cult. Others believed she was something much older than that. Something that had always belonged to those mountains. I closed the page and never looked at it again. Even today I still think about what would have happened if Susan had stepped out of the car with me, or if I had stayed near that tree for just one more minute. Maybe nothing would have happened. Or maybe I would never have made it back home. I honestly do not know. All I know is this. Some places in the mountains feel beautiful during the day, but once the silence takes over, it feels like something else is silently watching from deep inside the woods, waiting for someone to stop, waiting for someone to look back, and maybe, just maybe, the next person who pulls over on that lonely forest road will not be lucky enough to drive away. So this is the story. Follow Nightmare Files for more true horror stories.